Day 6 of the war launched by America and Israel against Iran and now involving at least a dozen other countries. It is the 5th of March, 2026, day 6 of the war. What do we have? Well, we have strikes continuing in Iran. Trump still maintaining that the largest ones are yet to come. Tehran is getting absolutely blasted right now. The death toll monitored both by the Iranian regime but also by Hirana, the Iranian rights organization, is at least 1,100 in Iran. I don't know if that's distinguishing between civilians and militant, but it's at least 1,100, probably more by now. The Americans are claiming that Iran's ballistic missile capabilities have been reduced by well over 80%. So that's, again, it's difficult to say exactly how reliable the word is of any level of the Trump administration, but that's what they're claiming. There is actually quite a few unprecedenteds have happened as well. Hegseth is out here boasting, scratching his back about sinking a ship. The first time since World War II, actually, the Americans have sunk a naval warship. They've got the footage of it here. Struck it with a torpedo. Look at that. That's actually mental. Oof. And then you can already see it's kind of starting to tilt. I don't know. Let's see what Michael Clark has to say about it.
It had to be a Virginia or an Ohio class, and I double-checked. It's the Mark 48.
Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about.
It's been around for many years. And you can tell as soon as you look at the image now, I had a good look at it, that the whole of the stern of the ship lifts in the air.
Iran says at least 1,200. Yeah, but I'm saying at least because Iran has confirmed 1,100. Okay. But yeah, it's probably higher than both of those numbers, so okay.
Mark 48 is a very heavy torpedo. It was originally designed against Russian submarines and very fast surface ships. And it goes underneath the hull and explodes underneath the ship. So it lifts it. And that breaks the ship's back, whatever else it does in terms of damage. And it's pretty clear that that's obviously what it was. So we know that that's what they've used. Which submarine it was, we don't know. A couple of Virginia-class submarines were certainly with the carrier group, the Abraham Lincoln, but they've also had some Ohio-class submarines in the area.
Those images now, Mike.
Yeah, what's curious about this, there it is, see the way that the stern lifts. If you maybe get a second look at it. The other thing that's curious about this, there's a fire already on the ship.
So you're saying the front fell off? The front did in fact fall off, yes.
It's not clear what caused that, because of a previous Mark 48 had hit.
Oh, is that the plume of smoke we can see, the black smoke?
Looks like it. Yeah, there's black smoke, but there's a lot of. This is a strange image in a way, but there looks as if there's either a fire or a lot of heat being generated from midships. But when the torpedo hits it, which is near the stern, apart from the explosion and the great fountain of water, you can see the stern lift right out of the water. So the torpedo has gone underneath the ship and exploded, which is what it's designed to do.
Why is that? Why is it designed to basically not penetrate the hull as
technicalities? There's not really anything interesting in this press update from Pete Hegseth. Maybe we'll watch General Kane later because he might have something more technical or something more interesting. Hegseth's entire bit here is just him basically soying out and coming over this boat strike and just him talking about how based and awesome and epic it was. And how gay the rules of engagement are, probably. One day he's going to call the rules of engagement gay and retarded, guarantee. Piece of shit. It's still kind of a wild goose chase of listening to different American representatives trying to give various explanations for why America is actually there and what their goal is. Still kind of just like a dog chasing its tail, but...
Murderous terrorist leaders are paying for their crimes against America, and they are paying in blood. Since 1979, the terrorist Iranian regime has actively and intentionally facilitated the killings of Americans. They chant death to America and
Loner, it's China. Yeah, I know, but then I know that from the classic American hawk, who are probably the people who are whispering in Trump's ear most of this time, will make it about China. And that explains the rest of Trump's foreign policy. It explains Greenland, it explains Cuba, it explains Venezuela. But why have none of them mentioned that? Why does Trump not mention China a single time? Is it maybe just because they've sold it to him with different explanations, or because they just don't think China is as compelling to the American public? But none of this is compelling to the American public, so...
And other radical terrorists who attack our country and are seeking to destroy Western civilization itself. These terrorists seized our embassy and took 66 Americans hostage in Tehran. They slaughtered 241...
And obviously she's giving the same rationale that Trump gave right at the beginning. She's just giving like a revenge story, I guess. The IRGC and all the crimes that they've committed against Americans over the last 40 plus years. Which, I mean, they have, and some of them are still in power, but... It's still not really war rationale, not quite there, but...
On U.S. service members with a truck bombing in Beirut. They killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq, and this is just a small fraction of their blood-soaked record. Prior leaders have been too weak and ineffective to address this threat. Some, like Barack Hussein Obama, even sent pallets of cash that ultimately financed this terrorist crusade.
Actual fascist queen. Jesus. I love the shoehorning of Hussein into Obama.
Against the United States.
Why don't they pronounce names differently on purpose, don't they? Like Kamala, or why don't they start saying Obama? Why not? Barack Hussein Obama. And then eventually that will sort of pick up arms and legs of its own, and then that'll get telephoned into Iraq Hussein Obama. And then eventually you're just going to get Iraq Hussein Obama, Iraq Hussein Mohammed al-Baghdadi a bomber, comma.
Our people, while signing stupid and naive deals that put Iran on the path of developing nuclear bombs. After years of endless appeasement and empty statements from politicians on both sides of the political aisle...
It'll become like a Game of Thrones title, won't it? Dude. Barack Hussein Mohammed Abdullah Ali Obama, a bomber, comma, the bomber, comma, a Kenyan citizen.
In this town, President Trump is finally the man of action. President Trump is holding these monsters accountable and permanently extinguishing their nuclear ambitions. Future generations of Americans will look to this moment as the moment where the specter of a nuclear armed Iran ended. At the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, launched last weekend, President Trump laid out clear objectives to the American people on what the U.S. military seeks to accomplish through these major combat operations. Number one, destroy the regime's deadly ballistic missiles and completely raise their
This fucking guy, man.
The president's decision here is extraordinary. It's known as Operation Epic Fury, which I got to say is just awesome. The operation names from the administration, top notch. Midnight Hammer was great last year. Operation Epic Fury, yeah, man. Epic Fury. The Israeli operation is known as Operation Roaring Lion. That is because the operation last year was known as Operation Rising Lion.
It's literally every single MAGA figurehead is just like a fucking coin toss over whether or not they were bullies in school or whether they were bullied or whether they weren't bullied enough. It's just... Unbelievable. So, despite that, let's see. There have still been a very unfortunate number of strikes in the Gulf. It seems like Iran is still keeping up to their strategy of bomb everyone apart from the people who are bombing us. Air bases in Iraq. This was the CNN damage assessment, and you can see that they cycle through Kuwait, fucking Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, not even to mention apparently Iran has a new thing right now. They've got the great state in America, the little state in Israel, and then the micro-Satan, the United Arab Emirates, particularly Dubai. Just today, I think, well, the Emirates is about, what, 2 or 3? This was posted at 11:34 a.m. This would be this would be by the afternoon, just like mid-afternoon today. Just today, by mid-afternoon, the UAE has had to intercept 6 ballistic missiles, take 1, intercept 125 drones, and take 6. And their air defenses are running out. Remember, drones, and this is part of the asymmetric warfare, drones are not expensive to fire. They are very expensive to intercept. They're very costly to deal with. And it's showing. Apparently in the Emirates, they've resulted in 3 deaths, Pakistani, Nepalese, and Bangladeshi, and 94 cases of minor injuries. Of the multiculturalism here. Emirati, Egyptian, Ethiopian, Filipino, Pakistani, Iranian, Indian, Bangladeshi, damn, they killed an Iranian. Sri Lankan, Azerbaijani, Yemeni, Ugandan, Eritrean, Lebanese, Afghan, Bahraini, Comorian, and Turkish nationalities. Yo. According to Keir Starmer, Iran is fired at, and then as in like they've aimed at, seemingly now, 10 countries at least. They've hit a few more with interceptions and things like that, like the ones that landed in Jordan or Syria. Another couple of unexpected ones here. Turkey intercepted a missile. Is this the wrong link I just gave myself? Well done, Lonerbox. Dick. Iran has denied firing at Turkey, but Turkey is claimed to have intercepted a ballistic missile that was coming in their direction. Again, I don't know. They could have been aiming for Cyprus or whoever else, but I don't know why Iran would want to bring Turkey into the war. Maybe a slightly different story with Azerbaijan. Wait, is this the right link for Azerbaijan? Oh yeah, that's a death toll. We already did that. Where is this? There were a couple of strikes that landed in Azerbaijan, one of them not too far from a school and the other one at the airport. That was just today. Iran's top diplomat calls Azerbaijani counterpart, blames drone strike on Israel. Interesting. The Azerbaijan president accused Iran of a groundless act of terror and aggression with the strikes, which struck an airport and near a school earlier in the day, wounding 2 people, according to the Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry. The Kurds are pretty much confirmed now to have started engaging Iranian security forces in Western Iran. Remember, the other day we were getting reports that they've been getting armed and trained by the CIA or other various American bodies. So it seems like they are engaging now. The Iranian intelligence ministry is describing them as separatist groups who were entering across the border. So I think they're ascribing it to, what would that be, Iraqi Kurds, potentially? But they're also claiming to, obviously, because a lot of people in Iran are Kurds, they're claiming that the Iranian forces are cooperating with the noble Kurds to thwart an American-Israeli plan. So it seems there's a few mixed reports now claiming that there has been some fighting, but I don't know if they're fully confirmed to actually be fully mobilized or anything like that, because there was an expected within a few days to be like a full mobilization of American-backed Kurdish forces, which is interesting because ideologically, Kurds in that region are very mixed. A lot of them, they are almost unanimously anti-monarchy, anti-Pahlavi as well. Some of them are Marxist-Leninists. Others are more liberal. Others just have like that a more desire for like autonomy within a particular country, like they have in Iraq or whatever. But dumb question: is Kurd and Persian distinct? Yes, they are. But again, we don't know if this is like fully confirmed. There have been denials and scant evidence, but it seems like something is definitely bubbling. There is definitely an indication of that. Yes, I'm aware that missile maths. Yes, I know. There's a few reports on this as well. The fact is that although Iran's ballistic missile stockpile could be massively depleted and their launching capabilities could be getting constantly thwarted. The drones are a slightly different story. Iran's got a lot of them. They're very cheap to make and they're very, very expensive to intercept. This is a guy talking about how that could actually turn into Iran's favor.
Expensive, but are the costs of America's attack on Iran financially and logistically unsustainable? Take a look at this. This is Iranian state-affiliated media showcasing vast stockpiles of low-cost but highly lethal Shahed drones. In response to America and Israel's attack on Iran, the regime launched hundreds of these against its attackers and their allies. But there's a huge mathematical mismatch between the cost of Iran's weapons and those used to defend against them. Take the UAE, for example. It's had amazing success in thwarting Iranian missile and drone attacks,
right?
Claiming to have downed more than 90% of those fired at it in the first 3 days of the conflict. But a Shahed drone costs between $20,000 and $50,000. The missiles used to intercept them between $500,000 and $1.5 million. One analyst estimating it could have cost the UAE up to $750 million to thwart an attack of around 500 Shahed drones. That's 20 to 30 times more than it cost Iran to launch them.
The math clearly favors Iran in this strategy of attrition because they just have, we don't know exactly how many, Shahed drones they might have in their stockpiles, but it's much larger than the combined total of the stockpiles of interceptor missiles that are available.
Does the UAE care about money? It's not just money as well, as far as I know. I think it's also just physical shortages, isn't it? Like a lot of this high-grade military technology is in shortage, like precision missiles, intercept. Because remember, the demand for intercepting drones for that kind of technology has also been massively soaked up by Ukraine over the last few years. It's much more, so long term, even with sanctions, imagine what it would be like without. Even with sanctions, it is very, very likely that can turn into Iran's favor just because it is more sustainable for them to keep on producing and firing drones than it is for all these countries that are being... It's funny, like you think Iran's being stretched thin. It's maybe even the other way around. Like all these countries having to absorb like hundreds of drone strikes already within less than a week?
We're now seeing sort of a race between Israel and the United States trying to locate this drone infrastructure, to try to destroy it, to reduce the pressure on these interceptors, versus Iran trying to keep it an active threat.
The UAE says it's got plenty of missile stockpiles to continue to defend itself, but it's been reported that America's allies in the Middle East are desperately trying to replenish their supplies of mainly US-made missile interceptors. The question is, will they be able to do that, given it looks like America may well be running out of ammo too?
It's going to be an arms race for that beam, man, that iron beam.
Take Tomahawk missiles, very effective and very expensive, being launched here from warships off Iran. It's estimated the US military's deployed up to 400 Tomahawk missiles to the Middle East, but that represents 10% of the 4,000-strong US arsenal. Stockpiles of THAAD missiles are thought to be seriously depleted too. America reported launching around 150 of them in its 12-day war with Iran in June last year. That represents about a quarter of its 600-plus stockpiles of that weapon.
We are using these interceptors at a rate that's much faster than you can possibly replace them. The problem is that increases your long-term strategic risk, particularly in other theaters.
America, of course, can always withdraw from the Middle East once it's run out of weapons, but analysts warn its peer adversaries are watching. If America depletes its arsenal through campaigns like this, what power would it have to deter Russia or China if
Big question.
they decided to lash out too? Tom Clark, Sky News.
I don't know if they'll lash out in defense of Iran. I think they are treating that regime like a hot potato right now. But yeah, definitely if there's a confrontation that involving Taiwan, then that's going to be a big problem. But again, it's another one of those things. I don't know if I trust the Trump administration or the way I think it happens is like a lot of both these militaries, like the IDF and the American, is like a lot of their planning. Obviously, the planning and the weighing the pros and cons and all this kind of technical stuff, it's very bottom up, right? Like, it happens from the people who are actually experts in the areas, and then the president and the administration is left with a decision. But what I wonder is sometimes if Trump and Netanyahu are given these plans and they just see a long list of cons and just ignore them. We haven't heard anything from Netanyahu, really. He gave that one interview on Fox News. I haven't seen shit about what he's been saying. Reza Pahlavi has made a billion statements compared to Netanyahu. Trump is obviously talking every day and saying something. Not much, admittedly, but Netanyahu is just not saying anything at all. And I mean, like, the Trump statements, even for the guy who is more yappy, it's stuff like
we're
this.
Doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And
this is mental. Like, this is like one of the most. This is like one of the biggest. This is probably the biggest military decision any country has taken in the last century. It's this century. I mean, yeah, this is absolutely insane. This is already, I would argue, a much bigger decision than the Iraq War because of the stretch and the amount of influence that Iran has across the region and the amount of ramifications compared to Saddam Hussein did. Saddam Hussein was kind of a little bit of a lone wolf by the time he was attacked. He suffered really, really greatly at the end of as a result of the end of the Cold War. But what the fuck are we saying here? We've got this nappy wearing, like, decrepit, decomposing president talking about how he's given himself a 15 out of 10. Like, what?
We're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And that was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. And if we didn't terminate the worst deal, one of the worst deals ever made, the Obama nuclear deal, I call it the Obama nuclear deal, where he gave everything to Iran, including a nuclear weapon. It was a road to a nuclear weapon. Bad things would have happened 4 years ago because they would have had a weapon 4 years ago if I didn't terminate that deal. So we're in a very strong position now, and their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead.
You should have called it the Hussein deal, right, for extra
and it's
impact.
It's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes.
He gave a nuclear weapon to Iran. The thing is, and I didn't think the JCPoA was really a solution to the problem. I don't even actually really think it was much of a bandage. But Trump has obviously been given the arguments against the JCPoA by someone, and he just doesn't know how to explain what they are. That's probably what's going on there, the way he's talking about it.
Because for 47 years,
Trump doesn't like the Obama deal because it's an Obama deal. That's it. That's where his interest begins and ends with the JCPoA.
Pushed around, and we shouldn't have been. And I think I can say, and you see it as well as I do, you see the tremendous progress that's being made. Their missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launchers are being wiped out. They're attacking their neighbors. They're attacking their, in some cases, allies, or not so long ago allies. And, you know, it's really a nation that was out of control, and they would have used it on us if we let them, if we waited any longer. A big factor was Soleimani, the killing of Soleimani in my first term. And maybe the biggest factor was the rebuilding of the military in my first term. And then the B-2s hit and I use the word obliterate because it was a complete obliteration of their nuclear potential. And that set them back very, very seriously. If we didn't hit within 2 weeks, they would have had a nuclear weapon. If we didn't do the B-2 attack a number of months ago, they would have a nuclear weapon. And when crazy people have nuclear weapons, bad things happen. So we're in very good shape now. I want to let you know that, and we will continue.
Trump 2 weeks, by the way, as in like a very meaningless 2 weeks.
Not forward,
based on anything.
But it's a great display of military strength, and I'm very proud to have, with some of the people in the room, both senators and congressmen, we rebuilt, and women, we rebuilt our military during the first term. And we're using it a little bit more than I thought we would have to. Venezuela worked out really great. We have a wonderful relationship with the president and the various representatives, and we're taking out hundreds of millions of barrels of oil.
John Bolton is becoming concerned this military operation may spin out of control due to incompetence. What a statement to come from John Bolton, eh? If he's saying it, ouch.
And that goes to our benefit and to Venezuela's benefit. They'll be doing better than they've ever done before, and we will get a big piece of that, and we'll also make life wonderful for the people of Venezuela who have been very, very badly hit. So
don't forget
that's
Venezuela.
A lot said in a short period of time, but you can witness it for yourself.
What is this? Is this apparently... Is there anywhere Lonerbox speaks at length regarding the JCPoA? Yeah, lots, but you can probably look at my Obsidian notes. There's something in there. Very disorganized note-taking, but the arguments against it are there. Is this supposed to be the Azerbaijan hit? Yo. Dang. Well, shit. What else do we have? Oh yeah, this went through this. This is no surprise. The Senate vote failed. The Senate had a vote in place to try and curb the president's war powers. Rejected 53-47. It would have actually halted the military action in Iran without congressional approval. It's actually closer than I expected it to be, because obviously there's a lot of the guardrails. There's a lot of precedent here that presidents do have the ability to launch some level of military action within 60 days, and then they have to go to Congress to get the vote. But they still have to consult at least the 8 in Congress before they do it. They still have to inform people. They didn't do that in time. Not Congress, the Senate. I'm talking about Congress in general. I know the Senate did this vote. Yes, I know. But I'm talking about the Congress in general when it comes to war powers. Wouldn't have survived a veto. Yeah, exactly, because the president can veto this, and then they would have to get 60 to veto the president's veto. Yeah. Whoa, who could have who could have seen that being abused by the executive and half the country not believing in democracy? That's crazy. Bright Yellow Pants, thanks to Tier 1 sub. Of course the war is illegal, but is it a just war? Again, the concept, I think, is, but just not in the hands of any of these people. So no, really. Like, again, like, I just don't, there's no way of knowing like how Trump or any of these people, like what kind of anticipated outcomes they were considering, what the pros and cons were, like what caveats they were considering, because there's so much that you need to be quite sure about that I just don't think Trump would have cared about. There's so much that you would need to consider, like the outcomes on the ground or the factional leanings, or like how many defectors can you actually get? Is it really 50,000? What about the other 600 or 550,000 people in Iran or in the military? So yeah, fuck knows. Not good with these guys. What about
welcome?
Apparently Carney gave a strange statement here, but we'll see.
That's fantastic. Very kind. It's exceptionally generous. I mean, Michael, like, what can I do after that introduction? It's incredible. Great. I'm honored to be here at the Lowy Institute. I'm honored to be here in the presence of Malcolm Turnbull. I learned how to move from being an investment banker to a successful politician, amongst other, from Malcolm. How to translate caring about the environment and doing something about the environment from Malcolm, and how to keep going from Malcolm. I learned how to manage risk from Glenn Stevens. Also, a man...
He came out strongly in favor initially and then later walked it back. Yeah.
Have you ever done vaudeville, Glenn? Not yet. There's time. There's still time. There's still time. We'll do that. But no, and Stephen, thank you. Thank you for your chairmanship. Thank you for having me here, fellow ministers, for being here, friends, Ross, McHugh, and others. It's a great pleasure to be here. This institute, for over 2 decades, has hosted some of the most important conversations about our world's future. That's why I'm honored to be here. That's why I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute in some small way at this crucial time. And I'll just say at the outset, I'm just going to say a few words in French, and then I will,
oh,
the
no.
balance will be in English, but I want to do
Skip
un
it.
petit résumé en français.
Bro.
Nous acceptons plus que protéger. You mentioned the rupture world. Yes, auparavant.
Okay.
So, you mentioned the rupture
Bravo.
world. Yes, the world order,
Voila.
in our view,
Say so.
is undergoing a rupture. And the old norms of the rules-based international order are being erased, and that new system that will emerge ultimately is yet to be built. Global institutions have often been too slow to react to crises and too ineffective when they did.
Oh.
And this breakdown has been building over time. Over the past few decades, a series of crises, beginning in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics, have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, and supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. So countries, and this is the point I was trying to make, in Davos, countries cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes their source of subordination. Geostrategically, hegemons are increasingly acting without constraint or respect for international norms or laws.
This is the classic Carney thing where he attacks Trump in a way that Trump won't realize he's being attacked.
Others bear the consequences. Now, the extremes of this disruption are occurring in real time in the Middle East. And to be clear, Canada, like Australia, has long seen Iran as the principal source of instability and terror in that region. The regime and its proxies have murdered hundreds of Canadian civilians over the years and caused untold suffering for millions of people in the Middle East and beyond. And despite more than 2 decades of negotiations and diplomatic efforts, Iran has not dismantled its nuclear program nor halted its enrichment activities. Canada has long supported the imperative of neutralizing this grave global threat. We stand with the Iranian people in their long and courageous struggle against the regime's oppressive rule, which is why we support efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. We are actively taking on the world as it is, not passively waiting for a world we wish to be. But we also take this position with some regret, because the current conflict is another example of the failure of the international order. Despite decades of UN Security Council resolutions, the work of the International Atomic Energy Agency and a succession...
That's the with regret quote that's getting used in the press, like supports the strikes with regret. How did that get characterized in the press? Obviously, the headline says he supports Iran strikes with regret. Canada long supported the imperative of neutralizing this grave global threat. We take this position with regret because the current conflict is another example of this failure of international order. Dude, I can understand like myself vague posting like this, or in a way that appears vague posting, because I genuinely think that it's a very complicated argument, far more than any person I've seen in this space giving it credit for. Like the fact that yes, Iran is a very grave international threat. They were fucking around. They were showing very, very limited, if any, intention to moderate or to behave in a way that could give any kind of security or assurances to other countries. They fuck other countries with their massive fucking cocks in Iraq and Syria and Yemen and Lebanon. Like all these things are true, right? And the nuclear thing as well. Even with the JCPoA, it did not seem, if you looked at Iran's behavior throughout that period, with the fact that they accept the JCPoA and then within a year they are going against one of the Security Council resolutions by testing ballistic missiles that have enough range to hit Israel, and having a clock in Tehran that talks about the demise of the destruction of Israel, and and then going to today with enriching 60% uranium, which is beyond any civilian use, which does put you within a very short range of being able to reach 90% and then weaponization. Like all of these things are huge threats that do need to be dealt with, and they cannot be dealt with through making deals. I do not believe that, because I've never seen any indication of Iran ever doing a deal that would have actually put that threat to bed. The JCPoA did not put that threat to bed. It at best delayed it, and actually seems to would have delayed it with, it's much more likely to have delayed it in Iran's favor, but because of the sanction relief. But yeah, it is very regretful that if the time comes to actually deal with the threat, it has to be Trump, Netanyahu, and just kind of going rogue like a bunch of fucking nutters, and then we just have no idea what the circumstances are like under which they're operating, or what kind of calculations they've even made before they made the decision, or whether they actually even care that much about. Wasn't the Obama nuclear deal working though? No. One day I'll go into the details of the long story short of the nuclear deal is that it basically gave Iran sanction relief before it ended, and also gave Iran the potential to do a bunch of things surrounding the kind of enrichment, the kind of activity that would have given them a very nice position after it ended to accelerate towards nuclear production. It would have given them sanction relief. It didn't really address them being able to test their ballistic missiles and to improve that arsenal, which obviously if you have nuclear weapons, you need a ballistic missile or a missile to deliver the weapon, right? And it was basically in such a way that it would have just put Iran in a much stronger economic and military position if they so wished to weaponize as soon as the deal was done, basically, or as soon as the deal was on the way out. They were always cagey about the length of the restrictions. Initially, they wanted the restrictions to last 2 years. Okay, they were cagey about IAEA inspections. They limited them as much as they possibly could, and actually kept them limited throughout the final deal. The final deal didn't give the IAEA everything they wanted to for inspections. The JCPoA was tied into a Security Council resolution that very clearly was against Iran developing their ballistic missile program. They did it anyway because the Security Council resolution that is linked to the JCPoA said calls on rather than like demands, or it said they calls on them to stop with their ballistic. So within a year of the JCPoA, they're literally out there testing ballistic missiles and saying, yeah, this is actually these are in range of the Zionist entity. This is like perfect for, and they're doing all this rhetoric while they're testing these missiles. And even Obama is kind of saying, well, you're kind of really going against the spirit of the deal here. It's like, yeah, it's not really showing an intention to move away from that desire, because they never did move away from that desire. Enrichment sunset was the worst part of the JCPoA. Yeah, I'd have to read it again to go into the whole thing about the sunset provisions. That was because they had an enrichment cap that would have lasted until 2030. They initially wanted the sunset provisions to last for 2 years. It became 2030. But then also, the other problem is that the sanction relief was timed to go into place before the deal was ended as well. As in, the sanction relief would have come like in the middle of the deal. So by the time the sanction relief is off, and the snapbacks were expired, it meant that if Iran went through the deal for say 10 years and then some of the sanctions came off, then they would be able to violate the deal afterwards, but the sanctions weren't able to come back. That was like the big problem with the sunset provisions. And yeah, so like once those limits were done, what would stop Iran from just increasing their activity like immediately the day after? Because the JCPoA basically got rid of the ability for once they passed a certain time limit, then they would have just been able to resume activity without sanctions snapbacks being triggered. So it was all very sketch, but one day I'll do like a full thing on it if it's still discourse in a few days or weeks.
Of sanctions and diplomatic frameworks, Iran's nuclear threat remains.
So the issue isn't, people try to say they were violating the JCPoA. They weren't really. Any violations of the JCPoA were very like technical and trivial, like to do with heavy water or whatever. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that the deal itself was very advantageous to Iran if you assume that they were still intent on doing something with regards to weapons later on. And the way they behaved with the ballistic missiles around that time is just very clear that they were.
And now, the United States and Israel have acted without engaging the UN or consulting with allies, including Canada. So the question is where to from here, given we have a rapidly spreading conflict and growing threats to civilian life across the region. Canada reaffirms that international law binds all belligerents. We condemn the strikes carried out by Iran on civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. We implore all parties, including the US and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement. We call for a rapid de-escalation of hostilities, and we're prepared to assist in achieving that goal. Because resolution of this crisis will ultimately require a commitment to a broader political solution, an engagement to avoid a wider and deeper conflict. Civilians must be protected, and all parties must commit to finding enduring agreements to end both nuclear proliferation and terrorist extremism. And we'll continue to pursue this approach with like-minded countries and participants across the continent. I'd now like to turn from that to what I originally intended to address more fulsomely, and don't worry, I'll try and keep to time, to the broader challenge that exists to sovereignty and prosperity. And I'd suggest that I'll start with the overall context. Middle power.
Okay. It's a fairly nuanced statement. Like I don't really oppose it particularly. It's just I feel like if you're a politician, it's a bit harder to be in that state. Stephen Miller.
All right, now for more reaction.
I mean, this is boring as shit, though. This is just him doing the whole World of Warcraft villain, as AOC called it.
By the way, I've known you and your wife, Katie, for a long time. That was one tough interview she gave me on her podcast that she just launched. That was, I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, but it was tough.
Well, I have to put up with interrogations like that every single day, Sean. You only had to do it.
We will avenge American blood.
It was rough. Asking questions that I'd never answered before. You know, I am tired of the absolute ignorance of some people in the punditry class and the Democratic Party.
Are you tired of the punditry class? Come on, Stephen. Come on. Give us your yap.
Nuclear. They should.
Military might has made clear.
Them straight, because I'm not too effective, I guess.
The president has made clear that he believes America's awesome military might should be used to protect and defend America's interests, not to surrender the world to our adversaries, to our enemies, to those who would do us harm, not to surrender the world's resources, lanes of commerce, or capacity to keep our citizens safe. No, America first means America will be the greatest, most unquestioned, unmatched power in the world. And it means we will defend American lives. And yes, we will avenge American blood. Iran has waged war against the American people, this regime, for 47 years. They took our embassy hostage. They bombed our Marines in Beirut. They kidnapped, tortured, and murdered the CIA station chief. They have maimed and wounded and attacked thousands of American troops. All of that American blood spilled by this regime. And President Trump for years has said, we will not allow a regime that sheds the blood of our citizens, that menaces our people, that spreads terrorism around the world, that trains proxy armies. We will not allow that regime to have missiles that can reach our troops, that can reach our bases, that someday in the future could reach the American mainland, and certainly will not allow that regime to have nuclear weapons. But what you're seeing right now, Sean, is a military under President Trump's leadership that's not fighting politically correct, that isn't fighting with its hands tied behind its back. One of the reasons I fear, Sean, that some people in this country lost faith in the military and the capacity to use that military to defend us is because we had a woke Pentagon. Because we had a military.
He's just so fucking full of shit as well. It's also, when you think, this is again, when you think about, okay, like the principle, the idea, like the argument about Iran being like basically like in a rogue position that does need to be addressed in like some way. But you put it in the hands of these fucking reptilian fascist fucking podcast bro fascist psychos. Like it's so fucking crazy, man. Oh God. Woke rules of engagement, eh? Let's go. IDF aren't doing too bad here with their social media. Fucking Star Wars music over their foot. This is them shooting down a plane in the sky, and they put Star Wars music on it. Like that's kind of crazy. Copyright, I guess. Fuck me, man. Can't wait to see Ben Shapiro reacting to that. Wow, cool. Haha, cool. All right. Which isn't even to mention which isn't even to mention the situation in Lebanon. Actually, also, no, wait, we'll come back to this. Come back to the woke rules of engagement. It is pretty much, there's a few questions that are more or less resolved now on this girls' school that was bombed in the first hours of the war. A few different sources now are saying it was more likely an American strike than an Israeli, but not ruling out an Israeli one, mostly because of America being operated in the south of the country as opposed to Israel, mostly in the north, but there is overlap. So Occam's razor is right again. This one geo-confirmed. Satellite imagery provided by @Planet now confirms that the school was hit during the bombing of the base. It is also clearly visible that all other buildings, just as the school, were struck at the center, indicating that one of the two countries involved in the attack on Iran bears responsibility. This rules out 100% an Iranian misfire. There is, if you're talking probability, it is so unlikely now. Okay, like for it to be a misfire, that would mean that America, or Israel, or both, targeted each building in this base, and also on top of that, the school, or they targeted every building in this base, head on, dead set target, and then a stray missile is going off at the exact same time and lands on the school, dead center. There's no way. It was an American or an Israeli strike. That's it. And an intentional one. Okay? So the question is why? Mark Rubio said in an interview, it is clear that the United States would not target deliberately a school. Deliberately is the key word here. We had already proven that other buildings were struck at the same time. Read our previous statement and assessment here. Using logic, given the school's position next to and possibly integrated into a military facility, the more logical explanation is that the school was mistakenly targeted during an attack on the base. Statement regarding our posts about the bombing of a girls' elementary school reportedly resulting in the deaths of over 100 girls. Because many readers still misunderstand our posts and how geolocation or verification works, I will explain this as simply as possible. 1. The girls' school was located next to a military base, and according to multiple sources, even within the perimeter of that base. However, this does not make it a legitimate target under the law of armed conflict, even if it was within the premises, obviously. The school was not in Pakistan or Afghanistan, so some footage claiming that it was old was nonsense. In Iran, schools are open Saturday through Thursday. Okay, we knew that. The school, located in Minab, Hormozgan province, Iran, was destroyed based on the footage. The claim that the explosion was caused by a failed IRGC missile launch has no supporting evidence at this time! The widely circulated footage used to support this theory originates from a location approximately 1,300 kilometers away from the school. That is a long distance. It is impossible that a missile failure visible there caused the bombing at such a distance. At this moment, there is no proof that a failed missile launch caused the incident. Using logic, nice one, given the school's position next to and possibly integrated into a military facility, the more logical explanation is that the school was mistakenly targeted during an attack on the base. A thorough investigation is required to confirm this assessment, or additional verifiable evidence must emerge to support alternative claims. When conducting analyses, always consider the principle of Occam's razor. When presented with competing hypotheses about the same prediction and both hypotheses have equal explanatory power, one should prefer the hypothesis that requires the fewest assumptions. In this case, the only evidence for the failed IRGC missile launch claim has been proven false. Therefore, there is currently no credible evidence supporting that theory. Remember, OSINT and reporting, journalism in general, is based on the information available at the time an investigation is conducted. Therefore, analyses may change as new footage or evidence emerges. Are kids going to school in Iran during the bombardment? This was from the initial wave of strikes. This was from the first wave of strikes. I'm pretty sure this strike happened like pretty much at the same time as all the other first ones. So they didn't even if given Iran doesn't really have like a very good siren or any siren system or any good like warning system for their civilians, but even regardless, they this one I don't even know if they could have if they tried. I don't think they would have. They wouldn't have been able to. So there is a second article on this. There's a few actually. It is also confirmed that this school was once part of an IRGC base. The New York Times have said that. CBC News. They don't say when, though. They don't say when. Which is interesting. So I don't know if they decided to strike this off of old, or just like slightly outdated intel, or how often they update. Because again, the thing I'm just not too sure about here, and the thing I'm like really mindful of, is that again, we'll do Israel as well, because Israel's part of this. Both America and Israel, their militaries are generally fairly separate from they're supposed to be like fairly separate from their governments and how they deal with rules and conduct and everything else. That's obviously changed a little bit, though. The amount of overreach that has happened from both the Trump administration and even Bibi's into their military is quite large. And it is just the case that a country's military, regardless of how good their rules and standards are compared to most of the world, they are always going to be, to some degree, a reflection of their society. So when you see Israel having the most right-wing government that it's ever had in its history, and probably one of at least the most right-wing population they've had, that is going, especially with a conscript army, that is going to filter into the military. And it's going to go into not just the grunts, but it's going to go up the ranks as well. That's why all this reporting you hear about the conduct in Gaza is that it's just a coin toss on which unit you have, or which squad you have, or which battalion you have, whether or not they're going to obey the rules or not. It's similar in America. Pete Hegseth is already, and it's very top down with America. Pete Hegseth has already fired a whole bunch of generals. He has given all these ridiculous talks to his generals about how he cares more about aesthetics than he cares about the Geneva Conventions. He's got a record of convincing successfully Trump to pardon war criminals. So it does raise a massive question mark over whether or not this was an intel failure that could have been avoided, or could have been fairly easily avoided because of the decision making of either like the Trump administration or the Netanyahu one. Yes, I'm aware Twitter randos are saying it was separated 10 years ago, which does actually mean that okaying a strike, especially a first wave of strikes, with that kind of intelligence is fucking mental. That is insane. The most reasonable explanation is that they didn't know about this school. It's not about so no reasonable person is going to say that they targeted the school. Okay, if someone's saying that, then okay, you go and live in your world where the target list of Israel or America is okay. These RGC bases, these leaders, these ballistic missile facilities, these drone factories, the Ayatollah, and one girls' school. This is not a serious argument, but it does not take away from the fact that just because they didn't know they were directly targeting a school doesn't mean whether or not they should have known, right? And with two cases where both of these armies, like the IDF and the Americans, are basically doing this thing where they have an increasing disregard for rules of engagement. Pete Hegseth literally calling them stupid rules of engagement, woke rules of engagement. Well, then you're thinking, was there a step here that would normally have been taken that could have been avoided? And my assumption is probably yes. Like, why not? It doesn't need Hegseth to be involved in target select, you fucking idiot. Hegseth doesn't need to be involved to filter down a set of principles and a culture of carelessness within the military, right? If your Secretary of War is literally saying that the rules of engagement are retarded, like that's going to filter down. It doesn't need to be his decision making. It doesn't need to be him in the room. But you're going to pretend that doesn't have an influence on how the military makes decisions? Come on. Stop. Anyway, one more update, okay? And it comes from good old Lebanon. Israel has done something fairly unprecedented. I don't think they've ever done this before. I've got the warning here translated. The IDF just today has sent out this warning to Dahia. For context, Hezbollah mainly operates in three parts of Lebanon: the south, which is the border of Israel, the Bekaa, which borders Syria, northeast, and then Dahia, the southern suburb of Beirut, like the urban area. This is not translated. What am I doing? Let me get it translated. Actually, did I download it? Let me get it. Google Translate. Okay. Basically, they've said to the residents of Dahia, this urban area, they've evacuated the entire place. They've never done that before. They've never given evacuation warnings to this entire suburban district, at least, especially when there's evacuations also from the people from the south coming up and people from the east coming inwards. So that's completely unprecedented. I'm not aware of any other war where they've done that. They didn't do that in the 2006 war. They've evacuated complexes. They've given warnings to people in particular buildings or on a particular street. They've never gone for the whole area. These are dense areas. They're densely populated. So they're basically, but now amidst this evacuation, they are telling people. So they've got these routes here. They're telling people in the southern suburbs to evacuate immediately. Just the entire southern suburbs. Hundreds of thousands of people live here. Telling people in these areas to move east towards the mountains, then telling them which road to take, the Beirut Damascus. And then people in the, I guess these would be the more northern neighborhoods, Rhetoric, and then telling them to go up north towards Tripoli or east to the mountain. So, can gross negligence be a war crime? Yes, it can. Yes. Negligence, recklessness, these are criminal. Yeah. There's not really much explanation for Israel doing this other than that they believe they're going in for the kill. I really don't know why they would clear out all of Dahia if just for a degrading operation. I think they've seen the weakness in Hezbollah. They have seen the unwillingness of the Lebanese government to help Hezbollah, and they are just using that as a go-ahead. I don't know what they expect to happen. Whether or not the airstrikes will just destroy all the infrastructure that belongs to Hezbollah, or if they're going to be evacuating it to strike some targets and then expect the Lebanese government to go in and maybe dismantle it. Because I imagine if you have empty buildings all over the south, and then the Lebanese army can just move in and take the weapons and leave, or something like that. But in any case, there is a response. Hezbollah are deploying. They're actually, why did this link not work? It's a Reuters article, whatever. If you think I'm lying, fuck you. Yeah, Hezbollah are deploying their fighters south and are probably going to keep some fighters in Dahia. What else is going on? There's also a bit of a spat happening between, to put it lightly, between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government. This is the Lebanese Prime Minister currently, Nawaf Salam, the Sunni in Lebanon. He gave this warning to the people who are displaced, or not a warning, but like a message. We'll do the thing. To all our people who were forced to flee, I say you are not alone. All of Lebanon is your home. It is our collective responsibility as a state and as a society to stand by our people who were forced to flee and to ensure that they have what they need with dignity and in the spirit of brotherhood and solidarity. And I want to say clearly, our people who were forced to leave their homes are not responsible for what befell them. Rather, they are victims of policies they did not create. Therefore, be aware of subjecting them to any mistreatment, discrimination, or exploitation. It is our collective duty to stand by their side and to welcome them in a manner befitting their dignity and our humanity. He's speaking to something very, very difficult in Lebanon, which is that when Shiites in the south or in the Bekaa or in Dahia, when they run away from Israeli airstrikes, there's this issue where, one, the state does not have the infrastructure to assist them on their own. They need to have they need to depend on the kindness of strangers, on the charity of strangers, either in the Sunni or Christian areas. They do often face massive discrimination when they go to these areas. People get assaulted or spat at, or like people refuse to help them, or they're often just left to kind of wander the streets with their belongings until they can go back home. It's pretty rough. And they also have to deal with the fact that people who live in the Sunni and Christian areas are, even if they're well-intended, they're mindful of the fact that Hezbollah militants, especially key figures like generals, might try to take cover in those areas as well. And then that is very troubling for them, because if a Hezbollah general is hiding in your village, then it doesn't matter how peaceful your village is. They might bomb whatever house the general is hiding in. If they're a valuable enough target, they might just do it. And this actually happened in a village that's not even too far from where I've got family. So yeah, it's in the mountain. It's quite, yeah, so it's pretty scary. But it does seem like the Lebanese government right now is trying their best to avoid that, because there's going to be a big, like, again, I'll say, like, I have no issue saying Hezbollah needs to go, and if this is how they want to go, then like fucking what else are you going to do? You can't expect, even the state military doesn't necessarily have the power to go and dismantle them within cities and within residential areas. Like, they would be basically fighting an urban war with their own population, and the Lebanese army is historically just not very strong. They're just not very, they are getting stronger, but it's still a pretty asymmetric. And the fact is, though, is that just because Hezbollah needs to go, that doesn't mean that there isn't this other end of the coin, which is that the Shiites of Lebanon didn't just like Hezbollah for launching rockets and getting them into trouble all the time. Like, that's not really the appeal, or the religious thing. The appeal is also that this is a historically neglected and very, very marginalized population within Lebanon. They got the worst end of the deal from the National Pact, and they are constantly treated with suspicion, or if not outright hatred, by other groups in the country. That the recent actions are not going to help with that. But if they are dislodged, there will be a vacuum in there that needs to get filled by no one other than the government. Like, the state needs to be the ones who can actually provide these people with welfare and with assistance, especially now, given that they're going to have their homes rebuilt. They're going to have medical care for people who have been wounded in the fighting. They're going to need to be able to help people get back to employment in an area where one of the big employers was Hezbollah, right? So that's going to be like a huge national challenge for Lebanon if this actually works, if Israel's plan works, which again is another question mark. And obviously one of the other challenges this poor guy is having to deal with, the Prime Minister of Lebanon. At the beginning of the cabinet session, I said, I heard yesterday someone accusing the Lebanese government of aligning with Israeli demands and implementing Israeli decisions. This is the number one ideological weapon that Hezbollah uses against anyone who opposes them. As soon as you oppose them, you are Israeli. You are a Zionist, you're a Mossad, you're bought and paid for. It is just like you're a collaborator, it's their favorite word. They will always do this, like immediately if you dissent. And this is talk that I, as head of government, cannot remain silent about. At the very least, it can be said that it is unreasonable talk and it incites strife. If it's a sin, this is because Naim Qassem accused them of sin for outlawing Hezbollah's military and security apparatus. Look at that too. In the expression used by the one who said this, then the one committing it is not the government, but rather the one who dragged Lebanon into adventures that we were all better off without asking about their catastrophic repercussions on the country and our people, in all service of external interests that have nothing to do with Lebanon's interest. Treasonous talk is not bravery, and the Lebanese have grown tired of it. True bravery would have required its author to review his positions, indeed to apologize to the Lebanese people for the new burdens he has saddled them with, from destruction and displacement and ruin. He's responding to this from Hezbollah's new Secretary General, Naim Qassem. Since Nasrallah, he's been the new leader. This is from Hezbollah's media. His televised address, he gave his first one since the escalation started. He's basically making arguments that had Hezbollah not been fighting, then Israel would just conquer like half the country. That is unironically what they go with. Citing Benjamin Netanyahu's Greater Israel maps and saying that the Americans want it too. And they believe that because to them, Greater Israel, to Hezbollah, they think Greater Israel means like a pretty big chunk of Lebanon and also Syria, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. Yeah. Countries they don't even have borders with. Sheikh Qasim emphasized that it is incumbent to take all possible measures to halt this dangerous trajectory driven by ongoing Israeli-American aggression, a campaign that, he warned, threatens Lebanon's national sovereignty and risks imposing submission and capitulation. Addressing the questions about the timing of Hezbollah's response, His Eminence asked, "Are we expected to exercise patience indefinitely? The limits to patience have been repeatedly emphasized," questioning whether 15 months of daily violations, nearly 500 martyrs over that period, roughly one per day, along with 2 daily injuries, and widespread destruction of homes are insufficient justification. This is the whole thing about trade-offs with Israeli violations of the ceasefire, which there have been. What they never mention is that Hezbollah have been violating it habitually as well. They're not supposed to be redeploying in south of Litani, but neither, it's not just Israel who says they're clearly not abiding by that. The government doesn't either. The Lebanese government doesn't agree with that either. So it's one of those going both ways thing again. His Eminence cited statistics from the United Nations, over 1,000 violations by land, sea, and air. Highlighted systematic destruction of homes and lands and of border regions. The worst thing about this, again, is just like, it makes me think, okay, let's say all this is true. Let's say that Hezbollah isn't even violating a fifth of what Israel's doing, or a tenth. How are 6 rockets at Israel and a drone at Cyprus helping you with that? Like, it's so stupid. But whatever. They also acknowledged that Israel targeted Al-Manar and Al-Nur radio. We saw the footage of that earlier. Hezbollah affirms the right to defend Lebanon against Israeli-US aggression. Sheikh Qasim criticized the Lebanese government for failing to confront Israeli-American aggression directly. Instead of condemning the attacks and seeking ways to resist, he said the government turned to Hezbollah, effectively aligning with Israeli demands. This stance is unacceptable towards Lebanon's sovereignty and the Lebanese villages whose residents face ongoing attacks. The resistance and its arsenal represent a legitimate human, legal, and international right, sanctioned under the Taif Agreement, all divine laws, and even Lebanon's own governmental and constitutional mandates. Hezbollah exercises the right to respond appropriately to aggression, defending the Lebanese people, and resistance and the nation is sustained existential struggle until its objectives are met. Where is it where they accuse the Prime Minister of being a traitor? What was the term that Qasim used? That Salam used? Treasonous. Where is it? The author. Oh no, he was accusing the Naim Qasim of talking about that. They don't mention treason here, did they? Okay. Did they mention the Prime Minister? The Lebanese government must act more decisively. Israeli transgressions have reached an alarming scale. Oh yeah, major sin, that's what he said, yeah. He said the Lebanese government's decisions, this is to outlaw Hezbollah's military insecurity. Major sin, arguing that they weakened Lebanon's position and effectively legitimized Israeli aggression. His Eminence stressed that ongoing concessions occurred amid relentless pace of attacks, as if these violations were intended to pressure Lebanon into diplomatic and political moves that would strip the country of leverage, force it into powerless negotiations, and place it on a path entirely incompatible with its sovereignty and independence. Isn't this the guy? Yeah. It's a bit of a fall from grace, really, for Hezbollah. I think the 6 rockets and the 1 drone on Cyprus is probably given Israel more of a green light to think that this is actually like the time to finish them. Depends though. It depends on what the government is willing to do as well. The Lebanese government does in Dahia. It depends on whether or not Israel is willing to avoid Lebanese civilians to the point that they don't just somehow drum up a massive popular discontent against the government. Because right now, in a way, Nawaf Salam is in a position, and the president, Ayoun, they are both in a position now where their fate is largely tied to fucking, and I hate, this is so horrible to say, their fate is quite strongly tied now to Israel's willingness to play by the rules, in a way. Because if Israel causes enough civilian damage, then the argument that Hezbollah and their sympathizers make about these guys just being collaborators or whatever else are going to be very, very weakened. So they need to hope, I guess, yeah. That was a big failure in the 2006 war because all it took was a handful of strikes that missed their targets and hit civilian areas, like fully civilian areas, killing like 50 odd people in one of them. Then the public mood against, in favor of Hezbollah massively increased. So it'll be harder now. It'll be harder now for Hezbollah because of how weak they are, because they can't really offer the same spectacle that Nasrallah had in 2006. They're not going to be able to fire missiles at Israeli ships and causing fires and shit like that. That's not really going to be the case anymore. They probably will kill a few soldiers, though. They'll manage that. No, Ayun did not wear his fatigues. That was an AI video. I'm sorry to tell you that. It was a very well done AI video, I will say. I did think it looked quite real, but it's not real. They still have Shia support. Yeah, they do. They do not have support from Sunnis and Christians. Obviously, the only way this government was able to get into power was because of Hezbollah being weakened by the previous bout in 2024, by the previous round of fighting. Before that, Hezbollah had basically been locking out the president because they couldn't get their own candidate to win. They'd been using their votes to at least stall the Lebanese presidency. Actual Facts Racing, thanks for the $5. Thank you for teaching me things, Mr. Witty, Handsome Scottish Man. Wow. Now that I think of it, saying witty, handsome, and Scottish is a bit redundant. Yeah, true. What? In any case, it's a very, very volatile situation. Kind of, still, I guess I'm in the Carney position with great regret. It's a strategy that I would say probably does need to happen, but my fucking God, everything about these administrations and the way that they're doing it and the calculations they're making, I'm still probably leaning towards it making... I don't know if it'll make things worse in the long run in Lebanon, but in Iran, I'm quite sure it will. Sneeko explains why the US made a big mistake by killing... Why am I... Okay, whatever.
He's saying that the US made a mistake to kill Khomeini because they turned him into a martyr, and Khomeini strategically wanted to be killed so that he can unite the Iranian people, which makes sense if you understand that he's saying that he probably had cancer. Also, he was 86 years old. Look at the way that the Shias are uniting right now. Look at how they're gathering together and understanding how evil U.S.-Israel empire is. So if they fell into his trap and assassinated an 86-year-old man, they martyred him, and the belief is that if you're martyred, you make it to the highest rank in heaven. One, he gets eternal paradise, but two, it activates something spiritual. It activates the warrior spirit within so many of the people that understand how evil Israel is. So this is something that Trump would never do. This makes a lot of sense.
I wonder how he feels about MAGA then. Wasn't he MAGA? Or is he completely gone off of that now?
Netanyahu or Trump will never use because they fear death. That's why they want to be God's.
What is this bullshit? Iranians hated him. If he's maybe talking about Shiites in Bahrain or Iraq or in Lebanon, I mean, they've always hated Israel. They've hated Israel for a very long time. Not always, actually. You can go back far enough, 70s, 80s. But no, they hate the fuck out of Israel. That's not changing.
On earth, they would never be martyred for their cause because they want to be immortal. Khomeini does not fear the afterlife. That's the difference between Khomeini and Netanyahu.
Oh.
Khomeini does not fear death. Netanyahu knows where he's going.
Damn.
So, if Scott Ritter's correct, and that they fell into his trap, and now they're going to be more galvanized, and they're going to unite based off of this assassination, Iran's going to be stronger. And I guess they supplement their loss. They have less troops, maybe a weaker military. This can make up for that. The U.S. is demoralized. That's the major advantage that Iran has over Americans, is that Americans overwhelmingly do not support this war.
That is true to a degree. Again, remember, Trump could just get bored and leave. He could just reach a level of American personnel being killed that he no longer tolerates. Or he could get just a Neville Chamberlain deal from the new Ayatollah and just be like, yeah, we got what we wanted here. Good luck, protesters in Iran. He could do that. He would do that.
We have hubris, like we have arrogance, but we don't have the people on the side of this war at all.
He still says his name wrong. Who's he saying wrong?
People overwhelmingly hate it. What happens is the troops do not fight the same way when they know it's unpopular. Part of the reason why the Vietnam War was such a disaster. Everybody hated the Vietnam War. And so even though the American military, the world's global empire, was fighting farmers and rice farmers in Vietnam in the jungles, they lost because the Vietnamese people, they were more passionate. This goes a long way in a battle with troops.
Khamenei. Okay.
Actually, this makes a lot of sense.
I don't even know if I'm saying it properly. I've just heard enough people say it that way that, but maybe. But he's saying Khamenei. Okay.
He's saying that,
I mean, it's very unfortunate that they both have very similar names, okay? He says Khamenei. Yeah, but yeah, it's because Angloids are not, Anglophones are not used to that. Ad hominem. Ad hominem. Shut up. Okay. That's... I don't know if that sneako bit should go in there. Kind of stupid, kind of redundant. That's update segment, I'm going to say. Subscribe, you fucking assholes. I mean, sorry.